This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
So excited. I mean, still be here is obviously super, super special. And, just to get the opportunity to play in that game is going to be, pretty amazing. I've worked pretty hard the whole training camp to just put my best foot forward and be in this position. So I've still got a couple days till the game, but I'm very excited. Yeah.
As he should be.
Yeah.
Jack Finley. Get it done.
Not his NHL debut.
No,
you
but
can thank his NHL debut to Braden Point for missing a team meeting. Which I never actually heard if it was that he slept late, but I do know Braden Point likes to sleep. So if I were to place a wager on it, he probably slept through a team meeting, and that is an automatic one-game suspension, team-imposed punishment. That happened when the Lightning were getting ready to play the Boston Bruins last year, so they called up Finley, and he got into that game. So this is not the first game, but I feel confident saying, Greg, he will be in the lineup when the Lightning open their season tomorrow. So it'll be game number 2 in the NHL for him. But in some ways, this is really the debut. Yeah,
it feels different.
He's earned his spot.
I could use some sleep. Maybe Braden Point and I could change sleep patterns. Maybe that would.
I did hear back the show yesterday.
Yeah.
Because I had some driving to do.
Did you hear Enzo?
I actually had a book event with a good friend of mine, Mike Neighbors.
Yeah.
Who worked for the Lightning my first year with the Lightning. That's when we met. 23 years ago. We've been friends ever since. He's done a lot of work in football. He actually worked for the Saints for a number of years, even though he was still based here. So he wrote a book. I've written a book. And then there was a third guy who is an usher/ambassador for the Rays at the Trop. He wrote a book, No Place Like Dome, which is about kind of his interactions with the fans in his section. And all of us use the same publisher, St. Pete Press. So the three of us did an event last night in St. Pete.
Nice.
So I had a little time in the car. So I'm like, let me listen back to the show, see if there's anything that strikes me in a way that we want to bring it up today. And I heard you say, I was up early with Enzo watching NHL Network. I'm like, oh, Greg. How early was early? What were they? You said they were going through the Boston Bruins lines.
Well, I just saw the line combinations for the Bruins.
Yes.
I was changing.
You didn't reference how early that was.
I was. Yeah, it might have been 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Some people that's not, but I was changing his diaper and I glanced and I told you Janot and Asimon on the same line. I'm like, man, that's something I'm gonna have to bring up on the show. How about that?
I like how you multitask too.
Yeah, you try. I mean, you know, you're just kind of in the moment. I'm just happy I'm able to function a little bit. We got a lot to get to before we do that, partner. Let me get to our sponsor, Reef Rum. You can enjoy some of it smooth, versatile, and now pouring at every bar at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts. You can enjoy responsibly. All right, so what do you want to get into today? We want to, of course, talk about the Sens, obviously, a little bit.
Yeah.
Brian Engblom coming up at 12:30. We'll ask him about just maybe some finishing touches from the Florida games in preseason, suspensions, fines. But also, too, we can get into the line combinations today.
Yeah. I was over at practice.
Pretty interesting.
As you can see, I'm not in my usual spot, even though I am.
I was going to say, where are you?
On home base.
Is this your home?
I'm on my lanai. We have some activity
You look good.
inside.
I like that.
Well, thank you. I don't have all the stuff on the wall behind me like usual, but that area is not accessible to me between 12 and 1. So I'm like, let me come out here. And I actually was pointing in the other direction, and Steve is like, that fence behind you is way too bright. I'm like, I'm sorry, we have a white fence. So this is a little easier on the eyes. So yes, I'm just adjacent to my usual spot, but
Gotcha.
Where I live is fairly close to TGH Iceplex. So I went over for practice, which started at 11, and kind of saw what was up. Brian was there, so yes, he is coming on with us at the bottom of the hour. And then I headed back home in time to come on the air with you. So Curtis Douglas was there. He is as big as advertised. It is very hard to miss him on the ice. Wears number 42. He's a left-handed shooting player. And he was rotating in basically as the 13th forward. So the lines were as they were when the Lightning practiced, on Monday in Estero. So they are the same, but I'll run them down for the fans again. So you had Gensel, Point, Kucherov. You had Hagel, Sorelli, Gonsalves. You had Bjorkstrand, Gord, Chaffee. And then as a fourth line, you had Kiki, Pontus Holmberg, and Jack Finley, again with Douglas slotting in every other turn, basically. The D were mixed up because they have a seventh defenseman. But when they ran them initially, they ran them without J.J. Moser because J.J. is not going to be available for the first two games. So this is what I saw. Hedman, Radish, McDonough, Chernak, Lilleberg, Crozier. That should not be a huge shock. But, I mean, I guess maybe some people might be wondering, in Moser's absence, who would be the partner for Victor Hedman. Radish has played with Hedman. It does make sense. And, of course, the Lightning had the three goalies on the ice. So, for now, they are carrying three goalies, and they are carrying one extra forward, understanding Nick Paul is on long-term injury and Zemgus Girgensons is on, we'll call it regular IR. And they have one extra defenseman, but that one extra defenseman is going to be serving as suspension for the first two games of the regular season. That kind of sets the scene for how things are probably going to look tomorrow. My expectation would be that Douglas is going to be the extra forward and Moser is the suspended extra defenseman.
And that makes a lot of sense, the way you laid it out. I think, the initial reaction to some of those line combinations was Geeky on a fourth line.
Yes, and you talked about that.
I don't know.
The other day.
So I can only go off of what we've seen through these preseason games. I mean, not at every practice, so obviously don't have a great feel for what's going on there, if that is factoring in, or could it just be some other guys have elevated their play in the eyes of coaches a little bit more than Geeky from that perspective, but I was a little surprised.
It's Chaffee. I mean, that's basically what they did.
And that's surprising.
Chaffee was at the start of training camp, essentially the fourth line right winger.
Yeah.
And then Holmberg got hurt, so I mean, it was a little bit of a mix and match. But when they kind of had the NHL group together, Chaffee was on the fourth line and Geeky was on a line with Yanni Gord and Oliver Bjorkstrand. Mm-hmm. And they have swapped those two.
I don't know. Listen, you don't want to judge really anything after not even a game is being played. We're taking a look at these line combinations for the first time, and maybe it turns out to work out really well tomorrow. It is surprising because I think Chaffee's look good, but I think Geeky has too, and I think Geeky, I don't know, does his skill set mean a little bit more to him and the team to be elevated in a top 9 role rather than a bottom fourth? In other words, when everything is clicking, who's more likely to be contributing offensively at a high level, hopefully, Geeky or Chaffee? Now, you may say, I'm not saying you specifically, but people who are big fans of Mitchell Chaffee, and we are too, that maybe there's some untapped potential there. Mm-hmm. That this is a guy who's got a really good shot, and he's trying to settle into his role in the National Hockey League, a little bit older, but there's a lot to like in that toolbox of his. And so maybe there's some of that. But Geeky, and maybe it's because it's the first round tag that comes with it, the pedigree. You do want to give guys like that an opportunity to see what they can do in an elevated role as well. I mean, ideally, Geeky's a top 6 forward for you. And I think there are some people who even question, is Gonsalves a second-line winger? When it's all said and done and everybody's clicking on all cylinders. As it is now, that is the case. Keep an eye on that development, I think. But I'm a little surprised. It probably speaks more to Chaffee than Geeky at this point. But that's my initial reaction to maybe what I thought was the biggest surprise that I saw from the lines.
It may last all of one period or half a period, too.
Yeah, could be one shift.
Yeah.
You never know. Right?
I mean, John Cooper does not have a trigger finger that just rests on the trigger.
No, he doesn't.
He uses that thing if things are not happening to his liking. So I think there are a few things at play here. I think Gage Gonçalves, spots are earned, they aren't given. I think Gonçalves kind of earned this opportunity based on what he showed last year, but he's got to continue to earn it. I think, in the case of Chafee and Geekie, what is probably more significant than the fact that they may have swapped for now is that both players had a very good training camp and preseason. Mm-hmm. And I always expected that both would be on the opening night roster. What I said was, though, I'm not certain that both of them are going to be in the lineup.
Yeah.
Airplane,
he's over here. He's
Airplane
right here.
agrees.
He's
yes.
right here.
That's
it's
actually,
live radio, folks. Come on.
Yes, that's actually reinforcements coming. No, I'm just kidding. The Lightning didn't make any more waiver claims. So what you should take out of it, I guess, if you're Chafee and Geekie, is not only did they make the opening night roster, they are presumably going to be in the lineup.
Yeah.
And, Chafee was in and out of the lineup at the end of last year. And Geekie went into this training camp saying, I need to make the team.
Yeah.
So they both had good camps. They both had good preseason performances. And they are both in the lineup. Do I think eventually the idea for Connor Geekie is, yes, he is going to be a top 6 forward? I do. But he's not there today. Even though he started last year essentially playing on a line with Hagel and Cirelli. We may see that again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I fully expect the line juggling to go on. So I get that. And we tell our audience not to be overly dramatic, hyperbolic when it comes to certain decisions that are made because the season is so long.
Especially line combinations.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it is just interesting potentially where guys are going to start tomorrow night. So I think you take that with a grain of salt. Good.
The other thing I'll mention, Greg, just because
Yeah.
I got to practice right at 11. Brian Engblom was already there. I guess they worked a little bit on power play before I got there. So what he said was they actually had a different first unit from what we have seen. We can ask him about this when he joins us. Kucherov on the left. So Kucherov was on the left with Hedman at the point.
Yeah.
Gensel at the right circle. So available for a one-timer. Point kind of at the goal line extended on that left side, and Anthony Cirelli in the bumper. Again, available for a one-timer. If the puck is coming from the left circle to the middle or across, you want lefties for one-timers.
Yeah, right.
Just like on the opposite side, if Kucherov is at the right circle and the puck is moving from the right side of the ice to the middle or to the other side, you want right-handed shooting players. So they're trying a different look, and Bjorkstrand was on the second unit. So I didn't actually see it. I got this from Brian, so we can ask him kind of his thoughts on it. But I think it goes to an indication that maybe because the Lightning had a bunch of power plays in the Thursday game against the Panthers and in zone struggled. We talked about that. They scored 2 power play goals, but they were both off the rush. That they want to try some different things. Even though we heard from Kucherov on media day at the start of camp, basically, he likes being on the right. He likes things more static, honestly. Less movement. If Kucherov is on the left, it almost invites more movement because his stick is closer to the boards. Like it's almost like he needs to move up and down to create space. And other players are shifting as well.
Well,
So
and also,
we'll see.
too, it's
It
gonna be
didn't
on a
work. It didn't work very well for them last year when Kucherov was on the left.
No.
But they may try. They may try it again.
Well, and also, too, because he's a lefty, his momentum is going to carry him on his forehand behind the net in a way that, rather than on his backhand. So he may have to have a little bit more movement from that
It's called a
side.
downhill power play. Like they aren't reinventing the wheel here. There are very, very successful power plays in the NHL where the guy who is the Kucherov on that power play, not the Kucherov, but like a Kucherov. Like the one that the power play runs through is on his strong side.
Yeah.
A righty at the right circle, a lefty at the left circle. Those power plays exist. It's not like you can't score in the power play if you have a guy in a strong side who is kind of operating, directing traffic is the way I want to say it. It's just different. It's called a downhill power play because usually that guy walks down the wall.
Sure.
And looks for options. He's moving. The power play teammates are also moving. The penalty kill has to adjust to that.
Yeah. Interesting. They're trying different things, but I expect that to happen.
Yeah.
Throughout the season.
And by the way, Gensel can score on one-timers. We saw that last year because there were times that it was more that he drifted to the circle. It wasn't so much Kucherov was at the left and he was at the right circle, but it was more that Kucherov kind of shifted to the middle. Gensel came up off the goal line to the right circle, and Kucherov fed him the puck. I don't remember how many of his 17 power play goals last year came on shots like that, but more than one or two. Like he scored some goals on one-timers. It was more that the goalie was moving and he placed it well and he got it off quickly, which is kind of what we've been talking about in the absence of Stamkos. Get your shot off quickly, get it on the net. Well, if the goalie is moving, you might find a hole.
Perhaps the question isn't necessarily if Cooch is on the right, do you have somebody who can bomb away on the left? Perhaps the question is, do you have somebody on the left that can get Cooch the puck for a one-timer?
Yeah. Well, it would be Hedman, but yes.
On the far, opposite where Stamkos was lined up. Do you like?
And Stamkos sometimes did that. They would go seam pass back across.
Because I think out of everybody's option we're talking about, even Bjorkstrand, Point, Gensel, Chaffee, Radish, I think Kucherov has a better shot than all of them. That's my opinion. And my sense would be, are there ways to make him also more of a shooter? And if that's, to your point, moving laterally, to me, the key with that is not only Kucherov having somebody else on the opposite side for that one-timer to execute, but also the opposite happening. Can you get Kucherov in a position for a one-timer, getting the goaltender moving, and have him be precise with his shot? Because I think he can be equally effective. The question always with Kucherov is he willing to do that? And some would say maybe not. He likes to set guys up rather than do the one-timer. But I'm talking about for this team, if your best passer is also your best shooter, maybe you've got to find ways to make him a better shooter in some strategic areas of that power play.
Yeah.
Than having, hey, he's lined up on the left side, he's going to be moving around a little bit, and we're going to try and do this. I mean, that may work, because he's such a great player. But, shooting was never a bad play for Kucherov either.
No.
And I'd be interested to see if that ends up developing more, partner, on the power play in some capacity this year. Wood and Whiskers on YouTube says, partner, with Dan Highnote new to the team, do you see any shift in the overall team structure, and how does he and Zettler split the defensive responsibilities?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that question. I'm probably going to have to talk to Highnote and be like, what do they have you working on? I know he's working on penalty kill. But I'm not sure, from what we heard, Jeff Blashill, who is an associate coach, which is basically higher, if you will, than an assistant coach, he was the one that kind of built the defensive structure. First of all, I'm not sure they're making a big change just because they have a change in assistant coaches. And second of all, if they were, I'm not sure that they'd be giving that to Dan Highnote. But I do know that Dan is involved with the penalty kill, which he was a very good penalty killer when he played. Beyond that, I'm not entirely certain. And from what I heard, it doesn't sound like the Lightning are making any big changes to kind of how they ran their structured defense. And in a way, you might say, well, why would they? Because they had a very good defensive year last year.
The proof will be in the pudding. I think once you start to see some games, you might get a better feel for structure and system. If there's anything different, I couldn't give you an answer on that, but we'll see. How that plays out. Michael on YouTube, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you go to a player, or you go to a coach, and you ask a direct question, did you change your system this year? I mean, they usually don't give you. It's like, yeah, we tweaked a few things. Like it's kind of vague.
Right.
So the change where a lot of teams, not just the Lightning, went to the Vegas structure, that was such a big shift that it did get some attention. But usually the changes, if there are changes, are moderate to mild, and they're not going to reveal, the players, the coaches, they're not going to be like, well, when they enter the zone, this is now what we're doing to, account for this guy on the weak side. Like, they don't talk to us about that. It's more just getting a sense, were there changes? If so, like, how big were the changes? And you can watch too.
Yeah.
And try and determine what's going on, in kind of the flow of play and what's happening in a game. Power play is way more obvious, right?
For sure.
Where you have players positioned in a certain spot on the ice.
Michael on YouTube says, I know if we send Douglas back down, he has to go through waivers, and if Utah takes him back, he can go directly to Tucson. Is there a time limit to that?
I don't believe so. The one caveat to that is if another team puts in a claim.
Yes.
So under normal circumstances, it goes by reverse point total. So the team with the fewest points, like once we're into the season, the team with the fewest points would get precedence. I don't know how it works when you have the original team, because it would benefit the player more. Let's just say the Lightning put Douglas back on waivers. Utah puts in a claim, but so does some other team, not Utah. Whether that team has more points or fewer points than Utah, it would behoove Douglas to go to that other team because that other team is going to keep him in the NHL. Utah would have the option of sending him straight to the minors. So that doesn't usually happen. Usually when a player is put back through waivers, the original team grabs him. And then, yes, the fan is right. Because they're the only other team that put in a claim, the player can go straight to the minors.
Yeah. That's a good point. Because he wants to stay in the NHL, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go back down.
And that's the point of the waiver rule. Like, this is to the benefit of the players. Douglas has reached a point, like any player who no longer has waiver exempt status, like he's put in his time as a pro player. And if this NHL team doesn't want to keep him in the NHL, then they're giving the player options, in a sense, that if another team does want that player, he can go play for that team at the NHL level. That's the spirit of the waiver rule, which is very pro player. Like, if you are pro player, you should like the waiver rule.
Right.
Now, we don't like it when we're trying to send a player down. Like, from the Lightning's perspective, if you have a player who is waiver eligible and you lose them on waivers, you're like, but it is to the benefit of the player.
Has to be.
Yeah. My expectation, though, is that if the Lightning try and send either Douglas or Copley back through waivers, there is I think I said the other day, a likelihood, and maybe even a strong likelihood, that they would get claimed by their original team. Utah in the case of Douglas, LA in the case of Phoenix Copley, and then send those players directly to the minors.
I think that's pretty fair to say. Chris on X said, did you see Sergeyev's Russian interview over the summer throwing Jeff Blashill under the bus, saying Blashill was one pushing the new defensive system and the players didn't like it?
We touched on that on an earlier show.
He was vocal about it.
Yeah, he was vocal.
We touched on it, and what more can you say about it?
Yeah, the Lightning have, subsequent to that point, adjusted their system. And all you have to do is look at their numbers last year and see how good they were defensively. Regular season. Playoffs were a different animal. They had a bad game 1. They had a bad game 5 defensively. 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
They played well defensively.
they did.
Yeah. Or at least they kept their goals against down. Game 3, they gave us some chances. Vasi was very good in that game. That was the one game they won. They defended well in game 2, and up until the last couple of minutes of game 4, they defended well. Now, they didn't get it done, so at the end of the day, you're like, they didn't get it done defensively. Fair enough. But if you look at the body of their work for those middle 3 games, it was at a fairly high level. But it wasn't good enough to win the series, not even close. In part because they had some major problems defensively in the first and 5th games. And in game 1, some of that was tied to penalty kill, where they gave up 3 power play goals.
Local Nomad on YouTube says, does Pontus Holmberg kill penalties? No Paul or Gergensen, so we have Hagel, Sorelli, Gord, and he has a question mark.
Yeah, Holmberg does kill penalties. In fact, Holmberg and Gergensen's, I think, were slated to be a penalty kill pair, and may still be, but Gergensen's is now hurt. Look at Holmberg as kind of a replacement for Glendening in what Glendening did for the team. May not be exact, because Glendening took a lot of those face-offs to the right of the goalie in the defensive zone. They may ask Holmberg to take some of those on his weak side. But in terms of like bottom 6 forward, center, playing with Gergensen's, penalty killing, that's what I think we're going to see Holmberg do.
Yeah.
For the Lightning.
Lucas on X says, do you think Kucherov will take the McDavid route for his new deal? Short-term, high-ish cap, or more of the Gord Marchand-style contract that locks him up at a fair number into his 40s? I mean, the real answer to that is I have no idea.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, Kuch can sign his new deal as early as next July 1. We'll see. I mean, the fact that McDavid did it may lead other players to doing it too. You're kind of betting on yourself. I mean, McDavid probably doesn't need to bet on himself, but you're saying I'm gonna get another contract in 2 years. The cap's gonna go up. You know, I can probably cash in for even more money as opposed to the stability, if you will, of a longer term deal.
That part's interesting. And Brian Engblom's here, you know, the trickle effect of a player, a star player who takes less. And what does that mean?
Less years.
Less years.
Yeah.
Less years. You know, what does that mean for others in that boat? Who knows? Brian Engblom is with us, and always happy to have Brian on the show. And have we settled down after the last 2 preseason games against the Panthers, Brian? And what did you make of everything that happened, the suspensions, the fines? We had a lot of people talk about, well, you know, the Lightning were the ones that got hammered pretty good. What happened to Florida? Nothing happened to them. How did you take a look at everything there?
That's certainly true. I was surprised that they didn't really get anything. So it was pretty lopsided. I didn't agree with that, that's for sure. But as far as what the Lightning did, worth every dollar, every minute. Absolutely. It needed to be done. I said this to Mish the other day and a couple of other people too. 1975, Montreal Canadiens play against the Flyers. The Flyers had won 2 straight Stanley Cups. I talked about this with Chief the other day, remember? The bullies and everything that had happened. And so preseason game in Montreal dressed a bunch of tough guys, but it wasn't just that. It was Larry Robinson, Serge Savard, a couple of the Hall of Fame players. They fought. They took on Selesky, Houndog Kelly, and Dave the Hammer Schultz. And it was a brawl, and they beat them. And then the next night in Philadelphia, and same thing happened. They knew, and Montreal brought up some guys from the American League who were tough. And this is back in the real fighting days when there were bench clearing brawls. And there was a big brawl again there too. And Montreal people looked back at that and went, that was a huge turning point. And it was the start of 4 cups in a row for Montreal after the 2 cups by Philadelphia. You can agree with it, not agree with it. That was a whole different era. Get it, and I don't have to bring that up. But still, intimidation is still a factor. Ask the Florida Panthers. Florida intimidate a lot of teams, and they try to intimidate a lot of teams. So if you don't answer, and how you answer is up to you. And if you think, and I think it was talked about by Kucherov, and so many other guys, you can say, well, okay, they're going to take penalties. We'll beat them on the power play. That didn't happen in playoffs, did it? They shut the Lightning down on the power play in the playoffs as well. So they didn't have an answer for that. So I think from judging from what the team did, the way all the players reacted, including the guys who were new to the organization and came up, and got involved right off the bat, good for them. Do I think it was necessary? Absolutely. You bet.
So in the Thursday telecast, Pat Maroon was making his debut on your broadcast as an intermission panelist, and he and Ryan Malone were not happy about what happened with Greer and Hagel, and what Maroon said was, this is not over. Definitely not over. Greer is going to have to answer for what he did, and clearly we had a lot of activity on Saturday. Do you think that there is more coming? Like, if we had Pat Maroon on, would he say still, this is not over, still?
If it's, I'm saying the same thing. It's not over. That's for sure. And look, Patrick Brendan Hagel, when he's back in the lineup against Florida, that's not till mid-November now, right? So when he's back in the lineup and he's out there against Ekblad, do I think you guys know Brandon Hagel? You've been watching him long enough. Do you think it's over for Brandon Hagel after the collision and what Ekblad did to him in the playoffs? For me, it wouldn't be. And just knowing what I know and have seen from Brandon Hagel, not a chance. It may not be in the first game, may not be in the second game, may not be till the fourth game of the season. But just being there all the time and looking for that one spot where he's where Ekblad in particular is not ready for it. I'm not talking about doing anything illegal. I'm talking about getting a crack at a guy and saying, I still remember. And, it's an intimidating sport. It's an intimidation game. And if you crumble under that intimidation, that's going to give the other guy a little bit of an advantage. So do I think it's over? Absolutely not.
Curtis Douglas, what do you make? And is that a direct result of what we saw with the Panthers, and maybe just in general to have that guy around, assuming he's able to stay with the club the whole year?
I don't know him. I've looked up some info on him. I will look up some more. That has a correlation, obviously, on what they're trying to do. And again, it's ever since Pat Maroon left. I mean, that's the best example, right? That just shows you, underscores how much stuff Pat took care of just by himself, because he's incredibly intelligent about it, very experienced guy, was willing to go in front of not just Florida, but any bench, the entire bench, and go, you're not touching 86. No, you're not touching 21. No, you're not touching that guy. Me. That's who it's going to be, me. And I'll take on any one of you guys, and you have to be able to back it up. You can't just say it. You got to be able to back it up. So you need a forward who's capable of putting a little bit of second thought in the minds of guys on the opposing team. Then you have a couple of scraps and you do well, and then it travels around the league like you read about, and then you don't have to do it nearly as much after that.
So Brian, when I arrived at practice today right around 11, you were already there, and you'd said they'd worked a bit on the power play beforehand, and I was curious to hear that they'd Kucherov at the left circle, and they had revamped the look and some of the personnel on the first unit with Cirelli out there in the bumper instead of Oliver Bjorkstrand. What did you make of that as a unit, and what did you make of the fact that the Lightning were trying Kucherov on the left again?
Well, I've seen him a few times, over the last year or so on the left side. He doesn't look like he likes it. And, Kucherov being Kucherov, and as critical as he is to the power play, as we all know, everything runs through him. So, but to me, it's about showing look. Look, it's a very aggressive league. It's very well coached. There is basically an antidote for everything. It's like the NFL, right? Okay, these guys run this defense. Okay, we have a play that can penetrate that defense. this team likes to run, the option play with the quarterback on the roll up. Well, there's a defense for that. Well, that's the way the NHL is now. There's an antidote for every power play. You have to continue to show different looks. It keeps it fresh, for one thing, for the players, but also, especially within their own division. And I think Florida, again, proved it against the Lightning in the playoffs last year. Lightning had a terrific power play all season long. It only scored, 2 goals in the playoffs against Florida. And in the playoffs, again, to me, I've always said, if you had to choose between having a really good power play or a really good penalty kill, which one would you rather have? I choose the penalty kill all the time. And that's also easier to do in many ways. So, you can argue that fourth, the fact that they're using different guys. We saw Cirelli a little bit. Then this is, preparation for guys, getting injured, right? You can't all of a sudden go, oh my goodness, we've had 2 guys on our main power play that we've used for the last 2 years. They're out. And now, okay, you go in and let's try it from scratch. So you always have to keep sort of replenishing and showing a different look. And the coaches, of course, get to find out some things in practice about what players are maybe capable of doing and going, wow, he's pretty good at that.
Brian, what did you make of the line combinations? And I totally understand, Mish and I, that John Cooper is one to change things up 5 minutes into a game, so take those for what it is. But anything stand out for you? We talked about Chafee and Geekie, and what does that mean, at least initially? Is that more about Chafee getting an opportunity more so than Geekie's play? And how do you look at the line combinations and the defense pairings right now?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm interested to see who plays tomorrow, who is the first combination on the third and fourth line. Because, especially compared to playoffs last year, Jan Gord was still there. Bjorkstrand, of course, didn't play playoff. Bjorkstrand, to me, is a very interesting player. I think he could have a terrific year for the Lightning this year. He could be, he's a consistent 20-goal scorer. I think I see him as that absolutely this year. He will definitely get some power play time. And, of course, that's where guys get a lot of their points and a lot of their confidence, right, which carries over to 5-on-5. So where's Bjorkstrand going to play? Is he going to be a third-line guy with, say, Yanni Gord? Is he going to bump up sometimes and play with Cirelli and Hagel? I could see that happening. All those things fall into it. So then, of course, that affects Gonzalez, who right now is on that line with Hagel and Cirelli. We've seen that before last year. He's a good forechecker. He's got speed. Doesn't have a lot of goal-scoring instinct. Chafee is a big, heavy kid who can really forecheck and throw his weight around. He's built more sturdy and differently than Gonsalves, so it gives you a different look, say, if you want to put him on that line, or certainly on a good, sturdy third line that wants to go in and bang around and loosen things up a little bit. I think that's where Chafee is at. He's in good hands, and he's another year on. And, of course, Geekie. Geekie, to me, is goal scorer first and everything else after. But when you play on a team as talented as this Lightning team is, it's almost a rough spot for Geekie. He needs to play and get the puck. He needs offensive chances. He needs offensive reps. But right now, he's going to be, looks like third / maybe fourth line. Okay, earn your way in. Show that you do have that goal-scoring touch. Show that you should be on the power more. Show to shoot the puck from everywhere, and maybe we'll change things around.
Last one for me, Brian. I'm very curious to see how the Lightning address the absence of Luke Glendening and what he gave them on key defensive zone faceoffs, either on penalty kill or late in the game with the Lightning or protecting a lead. Finley has made the team. He is a righty. Looking to tomorrow's game, when the Senators get a power play, and they may often start the power play with a lefty taking the faceoff, whether it's Stützle, and Brady Tkachuk takes a lot of them too, particularly on the power play, or if they pull the goalie. Do you think they would give Finley the assignment, understanding that if he doesn't win the faceoff, like he's out there, right? He's out there on the 5-on-6. He's out there on the 4-on-5. Or would they go with a more experienced guy who's not a righty? Let's say a Holmberg or a Sorelli.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. You can try anything, so that you have a feel for all these different options over the course of a very long season. And again, injuries fit into it. If somebody does get hurt, the top guy in 2 months into a season, that makes it a heck of a lot more difficult, right? So trying things here and there, I'm all for that. As far as the fourth line situation and for Finley, it's great, good for him. I hope he stays healthy, because that's always been his issue. He's got the size. We'll see what his success rate is now. The chips are down and the face-offs. What's he going to be? He's got to be right in around. Can't smoke every night, that's for sure. You start winning 40% of your face-offs or something, then I go, okay, we got to rethink this a little bit. But overall, I think that he's got a good chance to be a good, consistent guy. Who can win some face-offs, big body. I think he understands the game well enough. And now there'll be, earning his role and playing his role as a young player who's developing. And I certainly think it's worth a try. And that looks exactly like what it's going to happen early on here in the season.
Brian, we appreciate the analysis. We'll see you at the rink tomorrow. Home opener is always pretty special, and we'll do it again soon.
Oh, I'm glad we're down to it. There's all real players and everything is real again, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it, guys. Thanks.
You got it, Brian
Thank you,
Engblom,
Brian.
with us right there, breaking it all down. Anything? We apologize to our audience. I know it was a little choppy
maybe
there.
we should not talk to Brian when he's at TGH Ice Players, because his phone does not seem to be very happy when he is in that building. But we we hope I understood what he was saying. I know he was breaking in and out there a little bit, but
anything stand out for you?
Well, he said what we've been talking about. Kucherov doesn't like being on the left on the power play, but he said penalty kills are aggressive. Not every penalty kill is aggressive, but teams that see what Florida did to the Lightning may look to copycat that. And if you throw a different look on the ice when a team is possibly not expecting it, or if it's just one different thing that they were ready for one thing and they understood that this was a possibility, but maybe they haven't practiced it as much. It's not bad to have other options in your back pocket if you're Jeff Halpern. So we'll see how the Lightning look when they get a power play tomorrow. Maybe they just went away from it completely, the Bjorkstrand unit, and they're going to be like, all right, let's try it with Sorelli to start the season, and Kucher on the left. He also obviously said that this is not over,
Right.
which I think a lot of people feel that way, but I was curious to hear what he had to say on air. And
You mean with the Lightning?
with
and
the Panthers. Yeah.
And he brings up a good point. I mean, they always talk about hockey players have long memories, and Brandon Hagel's an emotional guy. But then the question becomes, when is it really over then?
Yeah.
Does it continue? I mean, we could see bad blood for as long as those players are still wearing a uniform.
Well, I don't think that you forget when somebody elbows you in the face and gives you a concussion in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
Putting what Sabrin
Yeah.
did with Ekblad to the side, Hagel has a beef with Ekblad. And it may not be somebody else with Ekblad, but it may be Hagel with Ekblad. And the way Brian has talked about it off air to me, and this is the way it was done certainly when he was playing. And yes, it was a different era, but in this instance, Hagel would say to Ekblad, I'm coming for you. But you don't know when it's going to be. Could be this game, it could be next game, it could be 4 games from now. So you put the player a little bit on notice, but you also put the other player on edge.
Yeah.
That's
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of how it was done. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of a different game now.
Is it?
I think it
Do you
is.
think it is?
I think it's a different game in that, like, look, you have the instigation penalty. Like, we don't have bench clearing brawls anymore. Well, I'm talking about a different game from when Brian played.
Correct.
Right?
We don't have bench clearing brawls for sure.
You know, you're going to get a 10-game suspension if you come off the bench to join a fight after a whistle. So, like, to your point, how do you curb behavior? Suspensions matter. Suspensions can have that effect, but it has to be a significant suspension. Are you willing to come off the bench and get a 10-game suspension? No. So when we have brouhahas, it's the 10 skaters on the ice and maybe the 2 goalies. That's the way it's been for quite some time. So that part has changed. The intimidation factor, I don't think that has changed.
No.
That's still a big part of the game.
No, and you know what has changed? I think I can't remember another time in hockey where the checking from behind is so relevant today. Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, I'm sure it happened, partner, when you broke into the league calling games, but I can't remember the disregard players have had for one another. And I think that's dangerous. So things have changed from a fighting perspective, but there's other ways you can do damage. And I do think the hitting from behind is something that it always astonishes me that it happens because guys are flying. Now, some would say they can't. It's hard because it is such a fast game, and these things are happening so quickly. So if a guy moves at the last second, sometimes it's on the guy that was hit, not necessarily the guy who was doing the hitting. But I feel like we're in a dangerous spot with some of these things. I don't know if it's going to change, but I think the way to curb that a bit is to probably be a little more strict when it comes to the penalties. Did we want to look at Ottawa a little bit today? I mean, I know we're going to have Ottawa, breakdown tomorrow.
All I have is their open night roster. And again, it's possible they may make a move or two between when these rosters were released yesterday and what we see tomorrow. But they have on their injured list Drake Batherson, who is a very good player and plays well against the Lightning. Tyler Clevin, one of their regular defensemen, is also on their injured list. So, I mean, we touched on this a little bit yesterday. Lixell, they got him. He'd been an up and down guy in the Flyers organization. He is on their opening night roster. They have a couple of, they have one European, Marilainen. I remember him from past years. I believe he is probably going to be the backup to Ullmark.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the rest of their group, and a lot of them are very familiar names. If they're not familiar to being on Ottawa, they've been in the NHL. Jordan Spence has been in the NHL. He played with the Kings. We mentioned about Dylan Cousins, a guy they got in the Josh Norris trade last year. Right. Lars Eller, we talked about him. He's a very, very good third-line center and, is new to their organization. Right. But a lot of the other guys were part of their group that got into the playoffs last year. Shane Pinto, Jake Sanderson, Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, Zetterlund, Artem Zub is a solid defenseman, Shabbat, Mike Amadio. They have 2 Cousins. They spell their name differently. Dylan Cousins spells his name with a Z, and then Nick Cousins, who was with them. I think he was with them last year. I remember him. I mean, he's been around for a while, but he was with the Panthers when they got to the Stanley Cup final and lost to Vegas. But he is on Ottawa. They have a good team. And they're one of those teams that this is a significant year for them, Greg, because they did take a step forward last year and got into the playoffs. And I will say they gave Toronto a pretty good series there. They were facing elimination down 3-0. They won a couple of games to force a game 6. They were in some of the earlier games, too, when they fell behind. Wasn't it Nylander scored late in the 6th game for Toronto, and that helped them win that game, if I'm remembering right. Anyway, it was a competitive series, and they're like, okay, now we're ready to take another step forward. Will they? I'm reminded of the Devils. The year that the Devils got into the playoffs, Palat's first year with them, they upset. They upset the Rangers. They won a Game 7 at home. They had the higher seed, but the Rangers were coming off the Eastern Conference Final appearance against the Lightning the year before. I think most people felt Rangers won the first 2 games in Jersey, if I remember right, in that series. That was a big step forward for the Devils. They got to the second round. They did lose to Carolina. And then the next year it was like, okay, ready to take a step forward, and they just had a nightmare of a year. That was when Lindy Ruff was the coach, if you remember that. Now, they rebounded last year and got into the playoffs with Travis Green as their coach. But, or remember, Sheldon Keefe. I'm sorry. I'm getting, Travis Green is in Ottawa. I'm getting the coach carousel mixed up. But they made a coaching change. They recovered last year, and they got into the playoffs. They lost in the first round again. But, like, look at this from the Ottawa perspective. Can they take a step forward? Can they build on what they accomplished last year? Those are the questions for the Senators heading into this year, and I'm sure that it is on the top of their mind to get off to a good start. 2 of the biggest wins the Lightning had last year were their home wins over Ottawa that came like on a Tuesday, Thursday, but it completely flipped the script for those 2 teams. The Lightning were able to catch Ottawa in the standings and basically, vault ahead, finishing in second place in the division when it looked like that series had gone the other way. The Lightning might have been in big trouble to catch Ottawa and maybe get into the playoffs. They did lose the 2 games in Ottawa. And we've talked about that's a tough place for the Lightning to play historically. So we'll see. The Lightning historically, I think, have done pretty well in opening night games. They had a streak there a couple of years where they lost the first game, but they did win last year in Carolina. Remember that game where they were up there because of the hurricane? I do, yeah. And, they had a very impressive, fairly emotional win. The year before, they beat Nashville at home in the opener. So we'll see if they can keep it going. There's a lot of energy and excitement, though, in that first game. There always is.
It's almost you feel like a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah. Then you settle in, right? Yeah,
just because there's a lot of things that are going on. Lucas got into, do you think Cooch will take the McDavid route for his new deal, short-term highest cap? I think I read that.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's a couple more here that I want to get to. Imens, this was from yesterday. Thank you for this. The optics, the lack of protection, the classless ring engraved. And here's a vote of banning. Who was the official of that game?
Jean Hebert.
Jean Hebert from Bolts officiating.
I mean, was Jean Hebert slanted against the Lightning? Like the Panthers got a lot of penalties with Jean Hebert working the Thursday game. I don't know about that. I mean, I think it was a tough, heavy lift for those 2 referees. Let's remember, today's referees are not used to games that we saw a lot in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. I don't know how many games between Jean Hebert and Michael Markovich that they worked that had 300 penalty minutes. So now some of that was them. They were like, you're out, like add them up, 10, 10, 10, 10, right. So that's how the penalty minute total got to 322, but that was not an easy game to referee.
Sure.
That's why I think that situation with Mikkola, it was just slipped through the cracks because, I mean, they're not used to these sorts of games nowadays. There are other challenges to being a referee today that maybe were less problematic when they had the bench clearing brawls. The game is way faster, for sure. And I think referees have to be in very, very good shape, more so than in earlier generations. So it's just a different sort of challenge. I did not take out of the 2 games that, Jean Hebert was somehow a problem specific to the Lightning. If fans were unhappy with kind of the discipline that was doled out after the fact, that had nothing to do with the referees. Referees called the game. And I thought they were trying to keep a lid on things by handing out so many major penalties and game misconducts and getting players off the ice. It didn't help. Nothing was preventing that game on Saturday from getting as ugly as it got.
That's why you almost wonder in a preseason game, do you just shut it down? Just because in the regular season it's going to be a different animal.
Yeah.
Preseason, it doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter.
Her other parts, I'm trying to remember what she had in there, or the optics. And look, we talked about this yesterday. The optics are not great. Like, if people around the league, and it was in two areas, it was how the Lightning got almost all of the supplemental punishment, and the Panthers got one fine from the first game and nothing from the second game. And then it was this whole Colin Campbell situation, which I've gone on the record, with what I think, but I'm one person. Like, there are a lot of people out there who feel that this doesn't look good. So again, it's the word optics. So the optics of the slanted kind of fines and suspensions to one team and not the other, when we had two games where definitely both teams were tangoing.
Yep.
Struck people as odd, whether they were kind of involved emotionally with one of these teams or not. And look, the Colin Campbell thing predates what's going on, in the last few days.
Yeah.
It just does. But I can talk until I'm blue in the face. I don't think that there's any funny business going on there, but people feel otherwise. So
Ben
that's
says,
due to the optics.
You think a senior VP of hockey operations has no influence on his old job in a department that likely falls under the operations umbrella? Whew, I disagree, especially a guy with a documented track record of interfering for his son, and whose department sent out the fines. This was towards
yeah. So look, there's a lot of truth in that post. I do not know if the DOPS actually falls under the hockey ops umbrella. They may be their own department, and as I said, they are located in different cities. So take that into account. I disagree that hockey ops is getting involved in what the DOPS is trying to do, but if it was reported that the fine to the team and the fine to John Cooper came from hockey ops, then then yes, that is a direct line.
Boomer has a bigger question on that we don't have time to get to. We'll do that maybe tomorrow. Local Nomad, though, on YouTube said, will Phil be on the home broadcast again this season? You guys are great together.
Yes. Except when Phil has other stuff going on. But, he makes, of the 41 home games, he's usually there for like 38 or 39 of them.
Yeah.
It's the odd game here or there that he might miss.
Yeah. I wonder what he thought of all the shenanigans going on.
Well, he was getting frustrated that there were just so many fights after every whistle on Thursday, and Saturday was even more excessive.
Right.
But yeah, I haven't talked to him since the Saturday game.
David, I got to tell you.
He will probably not be thrilled with the one-sided supplemental discipline.
Phil, do you feel like Phil is one, I don't want to say one of the few players who played in a different era that's maybe not feeling like, you have to fight and do all these things? I know he was a different player, but he'll tell you when he first came up, he had to.
Yeah.
I know he just doesn't like all the shenanigans, but other guys you talk to.
Well, for sure, he does not like what we would call staged fights.
Right.
Definitely not. Like, he does not have a problem if in like the heat of battle somebody blows their top and starts to fight because they took a slash, they took a hit they didn't like in the heat of the moment. He doesn't like when two guys are talking before a face-off. And
What is he like? What is he like less? That or somebody who goes slow for the shootout?
Well, I think you're going to say, I think what he hates the most is going slow to the bench for a change.
Those three. That's a great one.
I saw an article, I think it was an AP article, because it's been 20 years since the shootout came in. 2005-06. So I guess 21 years. This would be the 21st year. And they had a quote in the article from Lundqvist where Henrik was saying, when they first brought it in, everybody just came down with speed. But now you see the slow movement. Players are really showing off their skill.
Yeah.
So it was almost like Lundqvist is saying there is logic to going slowly. Basically, if you go slowly, you're trying to outweight the goalie.
Right.
And you have a lot of what Lundqvist was saying in the article is players have a lot of tricks in their bag. And so by going slowly, it's like which trick are they pulling out of the bag? Phil does not like going slowly, or when he sees players go slowly.
Get that goaltender back. Right?
He likes coming with speed, and we've seen guys point. Usually comes right in a straight line. I mean, it's not like point scores every single time that he has an opportunity in the shootout, but he does have a lot of success. Stamkos kind of has that patented move where he's not really going that super slowly. I wouldn't say that he's coming with speed, but he angles from the left to the middle and then shoots across the grain. And the Lightning saw that when they played Nashville in the preseason.
Right.
And Stamkos beat the goalie. It was Caleb Heil, but he hit the post. So, some guys have one move and they just do it really, really well. But yes, Phil likes the shootout attempt to be executed more with speed than kind of, what am I going to do? Try and take a guess. But I think more than that and more than the staged fights, as he calls them, going slow to the bench for a line change, I think drives him up the wall. To the point that he will say during the play-by-play, look at him going to the bench. Like we hear that, right?
I love it.
It is.
But
great. It always makes me smile when I hear him say that.
It does. We'll talk about that tomorrow, I'm sure, a little bit with Phil. But it'll be good to see everybody down at the rink for the opener. We'll talk more about the game tomorrow. Get those questions coming in at Bolts Radio.
And if you're coming to the game, they have the whole slew of stuff ahead of time. I know the players are walking the carpet.
3:45.
3:45.
3:45, I think. Yeah, 3:45. So, be time to have a little fun.
I will not be getting there at 3:45, but
no, I may leave at 3:45 because it takes me a while to get down there.
Yes,
but regardless, let's hope the elevator is working too.
Yeah, we've had some hijinks in the building, unfortunately.
I'm texting you and say, guys, the gate is down. Go to the
preseason.
stairs.
It's preseason for Benchmark International Arena.
It is.
I'm sure they have all the kinks worked out.
I'm sure they don't, but we'll
night.
figure that out. All right, partner, good job. As
too.
always, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Steve Versnick, thank you. Jared Johnson for Brian Engblom and all you listening. We appreciate you guys. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.